Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video series here today. I have something very exciting for you, and this is going to be a Rivals of Ixalan standard deck. So, Rivals of Ixalan, I'm not sure if it's released yet. Pre-releases may be happening this weekend, and the set releases soon, but it actually is already out on Magic Online, and I'm excited to try out some brews with you. So, when Ixalan just came out, I actually tried out a blue-black Pirates deck. And for those of you that don't know, or maybe this is your first time watching me, or maybe you haven't seen that video, that series, the blue-black Pirates series, was the most popular of my Magic videos, right? So I've made about 150 videos at this point. That blue-black Pirates, build deck had the most, views I've ever had from a video, and I have all of you guys to thank for that, right? So me revisiting this archetype is not just random chance. I want you guys to see this pirate deck that I actually, had a lot of success with in the past. Now, obviously, I ended up playing Teamer in the standard events that I did because, as we all know, Teamer is quite powerful in today's standard. But ultimately, if the metagame was a little different, I may have actually played with this deck, right? So let's talk about some of the new additions that Rivals gave to Blue-Black Pirates. So before Blue-Black Rivals came out, we had cards like Walk the Plank and things like that. We had maybe few less Lookouts, Dispersals, and we actually, we even had Chart a Course in the deck. So the deck functioned slightly differently. It was, very draw-based. It had all 4 Ruin Raiders, and had a lot of different things going on. Now we've really condensed the curve down, to 1 and 2, and then kind of a few 3s, tiny bit of 4s, and just like 1 5, right? That's ultimately what the deck is trying to do. So the deck really wants to have a very smooth curve out. You play a tap land on on turn 1, or you keep up 1 mana removal spell. Turn 2, you really want to jam a threat, right? Turn 2 is such an important threat. You really want to get something on the board because this deck is ultimately going to be tempo based. So let's talk about some of our premier threats we have for the 2-drop slot, right? So Kitesail Freebooter is this fantastic card that when it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand, you choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. Almost every single deck in Standard will play non-creature, non-land cards, right? So sometimes they won't have them in their, opener when you play it. So it's not obviously always a live card, but it is really potent in stripping your opponents from removal spells, and it's really powerful against control. The fact it can, even against Teamer, it can take Abrades, Harness Lightnings, Chandras even. The card becomes very annoying, and it almost forces your opponent to use a removal spell on it to free up their card, so that way some of your other threats can survive, right? So we also have Glintsleeve Siphoner, which is not a pirate, but the card is so powerful that it deserves a slot. This is also because Aether Hub is one of the best ways to fix for mana, especially because there's not a lot of fixing for blue-black in Standard right now. So Aether Hub is just kind of added value with Glintsleeve. So sometimes you can go like, turn 1 dual land into turn 2 Aether Hub plus Glintsleeve, and you're already ready, to get that card off of Glintsleeve Siphoner on your next turn. And it's almost like a Dark Confidant replaces itself, and it can continue replacing itself. What's also nice is that it's an evasive threat, right? That menace is very relevant because we also play cards like Ruin Raider. At the beginning of your end step, if you attack with a creature this turn, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand, you lose life equal to its converted mana cost. So we use life as a resource in order to gain card advantage. And this can be very overwhelming for opponents who are trying to 1-for-1 our threats, and then we just keep amassing card advantage, right? And so, Kitesail Freebooter, also an evasive creature. You saw it has flying. Very useful for that turn 3 to enable raid on Ruin Raider. And so another card that just came out from Rivals of Ixalan is Curious Obsession. This card is actually quite insane. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't attack with a creature this turn, sacrifice it, right? So almost all the time, you're going to be attacking every turn, if you can, with this deck. And Curious Obsession just keeps the cards flowing. And because we have so many evasive threats, we almost always get value immediately after we play it. And then, even if our opponent spends a removal spell on our creature, and it's normally would have been a 2-for-1, we've already drawn a card off of Curious Obsession, and it becomes kind of a 2-for-2. So, I really like Curious Obsession, and it's the card that replaced Chart a Course for me, right? Because we're so dense on 2-drops here. Curious Obsession plays really well if we go 2-drop Pirate. into turn 3 Curious Obsession, and we can keep out Lookout's Dispersal. And Lookout's Dispersal is one of the best reasons to be in Pirate, right? It's this mana leak, but it's even better, right? So it costs 1 less to cast if you control a pirate, so that would be 1 in a blue, and counter target spell unless its controller pays 4, right? So Mana Leak is pays 3, this is pays 4. This is just this catch-all removal spell that really plays into the tempo plan of the deck, right? You can counter, there's so many scary things that happen at 4 mana and up, basically, and Lookout's Dispersal just hits all of those, you know, hits Hostage Takers, Bristling Hiders, Scarab Gods, Hazaret, you know. So Lookout's Dispersal is, you know, again, one of the biggest reasons to be pirates. And obviously this is more or less just kind of a blue-black mid-range deck if there wasn't Lookout's Dispersal, right? So Lookout's Dispersal adds that whole pirate element to the deck. And so let's continue talking about the 2-drops. So we have Fathom Fleet Captain. So it's also an evasive threat, right? Menace whenever it attacks. If you control another non-token pirate, you may pay 2. So I really like this card, but I don't want to have too much of it, right? Because it doesn't actually add that much to the board unless you already have a board. So Fathom Fleet Captain is kind of this card to, you know, kind of get in there in the early game, and then maybe in the mid to late game you can actually start generating pirates. And that's what I really like about Fathom Fleet Captain. And of course, Menace really is useful for the you know, raid / Curious Obsession plan. You know, that evasiveness is super important. And now we can talk even more about a you know, Rivals of Ixalan card, Dire Fleet Poisoner. This card is absolutely insane. I think it's so powerful for 2 mana, 1 in the black, relevant creature types, flash and death touch. And when it enters the battlefield, target attacking party you control gets +1/+1 and gains death touch until end of turn. Which means you can turn all your dinky little 2-drops into cards that actually trade up in the mid to late game. Okay, guys, this card is absolutely insane. And I say that because there's a lot of Temur out there. There's a lot of big toughness creatures. And this 2-drop trades with all of them. And if your opponent wants to, you know, use a removal spell on it, that's fine. Usually it trades for equal mana or even more. And sometimes you can just blow your opponents out. You flash it in and it just messes up combat completely. Also, it allows you to keep up mana or keep up a threat, right? So you can keep up mana for Lookout's Dispersal, or you can keep up mana for Dire Fleet Poisoner. And your opponent doesn't know which one they need to play around, right? So, and then whichever one ends up being better, or whichever one you have, you use. So Dire Fleet Poisoner is actually just an insane magic card. I'm really excited to hopefully, you know, get some people with it, and in my testing it has been fantastic. So hopefully we get to see some of that in the games. And then a new card that came out in Rivals is also Warkite Marauder. So this is a card that I really wanted to play 4 of, but the deck is so, you know, tight on the 2 mana slot that I ended up only playing 2. But this card is actually super strong, right? It's a 2/1 flying for 2 mana. That's already fantastic on curve. Pirate, relevant creature type, evasiveness, bam, what more do you need? But it actually has even more power. Whenever Warkite Marauder attacks, target creature defending player controls loses all abilities and has power and toughness 0/1 until end of turn. That makes it so tough for your opponent to, you know, block, right? So if you have this creature plus maybe a ground creature, you can turn one of your opponent's creatures into an 0/1, and it just makes blocking a freaking nightmare for your opponent. And that's what is so awesome about this card. So I would love to play more. There's really not that much room in here, but I really would want to play more. And what's nice is you can turn a creature into an 0/1, and then we also in our mana base have an If in Your Dead land. So sometimes this interaction will come up where you can put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature and opponent controls, you know, post combat. And you can get rid of a really annoying creature like a Hazaret, like a Scarab God, you know? So there's all these different things you can do that are really awesome with Warkite Marauder. And so we talked about Ruin Raider. This is a key card advantage engine. We talked about Curious Obsession, also the key card advantage engine. And we talked about Lookout's Dispersal, which is the key tempo advantage, right? So we have these cheap threats, cheap card advantage tools, and cheap tempo threats, cheap removal. So let's talk about some of the top end, right? Because we've talked about the tempo element. Now let's talk about the deck that a part of the deck that when you get to the mid to late game, sometimes these little dinky creatures aren't enough. So you need cards that help you, you know, take over a board in the late game. So you have Hostage Taker, again, relevant creature type, human pirate. I played 4 in the past, but I went down to 2 because while the card is very powerful, it only works in very specific moments. It's very mana intensive, and it's not great against removal. So personally, I've gone down to 2 copies of Hostage Taker, and this is also because the deck is very weak to things like Scarab God and Hazaret. So instead of playing 4 Hostage Taker, we play also 2 Vraska's Contempt in 2 of those slots. Exile target creature or planeswalker, you gain 2 life. So the exile effect is really relevant against certain creatures like Hazoret Scarab God. Sending those creatures to the exile zone is very, very important, right? And then we can also hit planeswalkers. Sometimes we can be very weak to planeswalkers. So removing a Chandra, removing a Vraska, all these different really powerful cards, even removing like a Glory Bringer at instant speed before they attack. Again, really important. So Vraska's Contempt, very relevant and very relevant card. And also you gain 2 life. That 2 life gain can be so important when you're taking damage from your Ruin Raiders, when you're taking damage from your Glintsleeve Siphoners. Again, your life is a resource, but sometimes in certain matchups you get pretty low. So Vraska's Contempt really helps buffer that life total in certain cases. And then, of course, Scarab God is an absolutely insane card. We're in blue-black. A big reason to play blue-black is because of the Scarab God. It just takes over the late game. And what's really nice is your opponent is really incentivized to burn their removal, early in the game. And then they run out of interaction, and you slam Scarab God, and you start reanimating all your threats, right? If your opponent even gives you 1 turn with Scarab God, I dare say that the game is basically done. It's so tough for your opponent to come back from that. So Scarab God is this card that, if resolved, if it sticks around for a turn, it wins the game. So it's a little clunky in the early game, obviously, if you get it stuck in your hand, but usually you just draw it when you need it, and that's the best way to think about it, right? That's why we play 2 copies. We don't play 4, we don't even play 3, we play 2 copies so that we draw it with all of our card advantage tools in the mid to late game. Okay. I think I covered everything. So now let's take a look at the sideboard. The sideboard here is pretty standard, right? So to beat, things like tokens, control decks, things like that, we have Negate, we have 4 copies of Duress. I would say Control is probably going to be, even though we have a lot of tools to beat it, it would be our toughest matchup. Postboard, it is not a problem at all. We have 4 Duress, 4 Negate. We have a lot of stuff to take out in that matchup too. So, that matchup becomes so good post-board. Red is also going to be one of our more difficult matchups. So what I have for red here is 2 Gifted Aetherborns as well as 2 Aethersphere Harvesters to complement the 2 Vraska's Contempt in our main deck. And generally, red is going to be a very difficult matchup for us. I would say it's the worst matchup for this deck, 100%. No doubt about it. But hopefully we can more or less dodge it or draw our hate for our opponent when that time comes. And there's also going to be mid-range matchups, right? So Ravenous Chupacabra is a card that came out in Rivals of Ixalan recently, and it's just unconditional kill target creature with an ETB effect, and you can also recur it with Scarab God, right? So this is a card that I wanted to have in the main deck, but our curve is just a little too low to support it, and we already are quite full on our 4-drops here. But I did want to have it in the sideboard because I think it's really powerful against certain decks. And then we can't forget Gonti. This card is an insane card advantage / trades with anything, it's great with Scarab God as well. So you bring that in against like the fair matchups, right? Creature-based control decks, things like that. That's where you want to bring in Gonti. Decks where you want to trade on the ground or where you want to have a body plus draw card, essentially, right? And it's not just draw card; it's draw sometimes one of the best cards in your opponent's deck. So that's what I really like about Gonti. Anyways, that's the deck. I think I covered everything. I went a little bit fast, but that's because there's a lot of things going on here, a lot of things to cover. The Rivals standard metagame is who knows what's going on, what's going to happen. Teamer is definitely still around. Red is definitely still around. But there could be a little more, synergy-based archetypes popping up and things like that. So we'll see if we run into them. We might not. But I'm so excited to show you the next few matches with Blue-Black Pirates. So stay tuned for the first match coming up in just a few seconds. I'll see you all very, very soon. Alright, what's up guys? Welcome to the match here with Blue-Black Pirates. Yeah, we won the die roll. Let's play first. This hand is great. Oh man, imagine if we had like Aether Vial, right? That would be quite insane. Anyways, let's lead on Fitted Pools, get our colors online. We have Aether Hub into Glintsleeve on turn 1. Okay, Woodland Stream makes me think Merfolk. Fatal Push is quite a good draw if Merfolk is the case. So next turn we can double spell if our opponent plays a creature. So I would just like to get Glint down to get some card advantage. Yep, Metallic Mimic into Merfolk is my guess. Yes. So far, everything is on track. Interesting. Look how Dispersal is quite a good draw. Alternatively, we could... What I like, actually, is to just attack. Alright, our opponent decides not to block here, which makes a lot of sense for them. So here we have a couple different lines, right? We have really a lot of lines to choose here. I think my favorite line would be to Fatal Push the Metallic Mimic and get down the other Glintsleeve Siphoner. And just go on this plan here. And I wanted to get Fatal Push out of my hand first because they have things like Kapala, which makes removal spells a lot worse. Land is such a good draw here, right? We can counter basically any Merfolk they play, and we can also jam Kitesail Freebooter here. Can get another Deep Root. Our opponent just has a Kamana Speaker, which is pretty bad. It's a threat that does not line up well against what we're doing here, but wow, they drew Kapala, which we will happily counter, especially knowing the coast is clear regarding that. They'll just get a Merfolk, a 1/1. They could still block the... Oh yeah, this isn't the worst thing in the world for my opponent, as they can still block one of my Glintsleeve Siphoners. But at this point, we know our opponent's just sitting on 2 lands, I believe. Oh, God, I did not remember. Which one did they play last turn? They played an island, so I think that's what my opponent is sitting on. Here, I'm just going to go ahead and attack with everything. We are the aggressors here. If my opponent wants to double block my Glintsleeve, I think I'm okay with that. And I'll get rid of the Kamana Speaker. Yeah, our opponent unfortunately cannot just make this single block as they have to. Yeah. Yep, get rid of the 2/2 obviously, leave my opponent with a 1/1. Play Ruin Raider. Draw a card off of Ruin Raider. Vraska's Contempt. Super good card if my opponent rips like some Lord effect here. Opponent went to play another island, so we know they're sitting on Forest plus Unknown. We have this Direfleet Poison here that we can flash into block. Huh. Turn target non-land permanent. Owner's hand. If you have the city's blessing, you may put that on top of its owner's library. Okay. You got it, opponent. Sure. Opponent's definitely not attacking here. I imagine they want to trade for this Glintsleeve. Here, let's just go ahead and get our Flash Pirate in there. Yes. It's a lot of free booties. I imagine we'll play some of them right now. Attacking with this Ruin Raider might have been an error, but yeah, actually I think that's fine because we'll still draw a card off of Glintsleeve next turn. We got rid of their board. We know they're sitting on Forest. Yep. Nope. And here, let's just keep up Vraska's Contempt for any crazy shenanigans. We could have played out everything, and then we would have a lethal attack if our opponent drew nothing, which looks like they did. So maybe I should have just played everything out. Another Direfleet Poisoner. Wow. Yeah, this is great, 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 great. And now we can have lethal in the air next turn, no matter what our opponent draws, essentially. So, we're looking pretty good here. What you got for me, opponent? Lethal in the air. Alright, got nothing. So let's go ahead and take it to sideboarding. Against Merfolk, what I like to do, bring in Aether Sphere Harvester, bring in Ravenous Chupacabra, and bring in these cards that are really hard to deal with on the ground. Against Merfolk, their creatures are just... They line up really well against Fathom Fleet Captain, so I like to cut that. I like to cut a Ruin Raider. Curious Obsession is okay. Helps us draw some cards from our cheap like flying threats, although Kitesail Freebooter is not the best in this matchup. So maybe we do just want to cut Curious Obsession. Maybe that's just not the game we're playing against Merfolk, right? We're kind of just more or less stabilizing more than anything. Definitely not out-tempoing them, but... Okay, this hand looks like a mulligan to me, right? No cheap interaction. This is okay. I'll keep a land on top. Here I'll play Swamp to have Fatal Push up on turn 2 if I want to. Yeah, that's a premium threat to Fatal Push there. I'm totally fine with that trade here. Here, I'm just going to go ahead and freeboot so I can maybe take a Deep Root Waters out of my opponent's hand. Yep. Exactly what we wanted. So our opponent has Seafloor Oracle, which is a really good 4-drop. Play an island. Come in a Speaker. Sure. So here I'm definitely 100% keeping up Lookout's Dispersal. It's a shame that our mana lines up like this, but then next turn we can go double spell. And then Gifted Aetherborn essentially just blocks Kamena Speakers for days. My opponent's just going to jam Threat here. I'm just going to go ahead and jam my Counterspell. Fetid Pools will be most likely cycled this game. So let's just go ahead and dump our hand. And swing for 2. Because, again, that Kitesail Freebooter is not blocking. So our opponent has 3 unknowns in their hand. Actually 2, because they still did not play this Seafloor Oracle, huh? Okay. That's actually not very good here at all. Siphoner, huh? I think I'll go ahead and cycle my land first. Poisoner. I think I'd rather just make 1 attack in the air here, keep back some creatures to block. We know our opponent only has a forest in their hand. Looks like our opponent drew just a few too many lands this game here. But with that said, like a timely bounce spell on Gifted Aetherborn could easily swing the tide. Wow, so they're double attacking. That is really interesting. Oh, do they have Heroic Intervention? Whoa! That is a blowout. No, it's not. Never mind. That was just a 1-for-1. Never mind. That's just, wow. Ravenous Chupacabra. We know they're sitting on 1 forest. Yeah. I'm just going to Chupacabra them. And now I'm pretty comfortable just getting in here. Alright, that's a hit for 5. My opponent needs to draw something really good here, and considering that they're such a synergy-based deck, and we've already gotten rid of 2 of their payoff spells, yeah, and they just drew land, right? So that's going to be really, really hard for them. Alright, so no Glint Sleeve trigger this turn. That's okay. Opponent looks like they're holding back. No attacks. Just going to swing out here. I'm not really too worried about my life total. Our opponent doesn't really have any good blocks. They can block a Chupacabra, or they can just take all the damage, which is fine as well. Interestingly here, we could just play the Harvester, which would mean we have lethal next turn in the air. What you got for me, opponent? Yep, and there's the concession. All right, Blue-Black Pirates. Winning that match there against Blue-Green Merfolk. So 2 very, tribes from Rivals of Ixalan. They got some support, and both showed a pretty good showing there, right? Yeah, I think our deck obviously was just a little bit better. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next match with Blue-Black Pirates. I'll see y'all soon.